Okay, good morning, courageous boys and girls, men and women of God. Yesterday we started our study on 1 Samuel, and Hannah was the courageous person of the day. Now, little boy Samuel has gone to live with Eli and to serve him, the priest. Eli was the priest of the temple, so he was sent to serve God by serving Eli the priest. So right off the bat, Samuel has to be a brave little boy to leave home at such a young age, doesn't he? So we're going to pick up the story in 1 Samuel chapter 2, so I hope you have your Bibles. And I'm reading out of the an easy to understand translation called the New Living Translation. Now, the boy is assisting Eli the priest, but Eli the priest has two sons. Let me put my glasses on so I can see actually. He has two sons, and they are basically scoundrels. I was trying to remember what the name of the two sons are. I want to guess, and I shouldn't guess. Hophni and Phineas. I wanted to say Hophni. Hophni and Phineas. What names? But these two sons of Eli were scoundrels. They were totally disobedient. They had no respect for God at all. They were actually stealing and eating the sacrifices that the people were bringing to give to God. They had no fear of the Lord. They had no obedience. They were mistreating lots of people in different ways. But Samuel, if you go down to chapter 2, verse 18, it tells us some more about Samuel. But Samuel, though he was only a boy, served the Lord. He wore a linen garment like that of a priest. Each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. So Hannah has to continue to be brave. She can only see Samuel once a year when she comes to the temple, and she has to leave him every time. But it's also a blessing that they get to see each other. And Samuel has to be very brave because he is staying with Eli in the temple. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of the one that she gave to the Lord." And the Lord gave Hannah 3 sons and 2 daughters. So she had 6 children altogether after she had not been able to have any. So the Lord blessed her 5 times more than just with Samuel. Now, unfortunately, Eli, he was getting very old, but he was aware of what his sons were doing, and he did not stop them. He complained to them. They didn't listen to him, but he still needed to take greater action because what his sons were doing was just horrendously awful for the people of God, but also against God himself. So God sends a messenger to Eli to tell him that if you go down to verse 29, the man says, this is from God. He's saying what God said to him to speak to someone else. You know, sometimes God does that. Sometimes God will give us a word for someone else to help them. And remember that this word was to actually encourage Eli to do the right thing. But Eli does not do the right thing. And the word was in verse, what did I just say, 29? He said, "Why do you scorn my sacrifices and offerings? Why do you give your sons more honor than you give me?" This is God speaking to Eli, because he wasn't willing to listen to God and to take care of his sons, to keep them from doing what they were doing. He says he is going to remove his family from the line of priests, and that none of them would reach old age, and that his children would actually die in a violent death. In verse 33, he said, I will cause your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, to die on the same day. Then I will raise up, verse 35, I will raise up a faithful priest who will serve me and do what I desire. I will establish his family, and they will be priests to my anointed king forever. Then all of your surviving family will bow before him, begging for money and food. Please, they will say, give us jobs among the priests so we will have enough to eat. So God is so merciful. He sent this. Eli knew he was doing wrong. He knew the sons were doing wrong. He knew, but he just didn't have the courage. Eli did not have the courage, and that's what we've been talking about, to do what he knew he needed to do. And even after the man of God comes to Eli, he still doesn't take care of his sons. So what does God do? He speaks to Samuel. Look in chapter 3. This is probably one of the stories you might remember about Samuel. But look in chapter 3. Verse 1. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel served the Lord by assisting Eli. Now in those days, messages from the Lord were very rare, and visions were quite uncommon. One night, Eli, who was almost blind by now, had gone to bed. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle near the ark of God. Suddenly the Lord called out, Samuel. Yes, Samuel replied. What is it? He got up and he ran to Eli and he says, Here I am. Did you call me? Now this is in the middle of the night. I didn't call you, Eli replied. Go back to bed. So he did. Then the Lord called out again, Samuel. Again, Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, my son, Eli said. Go back to bed. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, because he had never heard a message from the Lord before. Samuel was still young. He hadn't had a personal experience with God yet. He was just serving Eli. So the Lord called a third time, and once more Samuel got up and went to Eli. See, Samuel was very obedient. 3 times getting up in the middle of the night to go answer Eli. Although it wasn't Eli, was it? No. He went to Eli. He said, Here I am. Did you call me? Then Eli realized it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, Go and lie down again. And if someone calls again, say, Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went back to bed, and the Lord came and called as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel replied, Speak, your servant is listening. Then the Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do a shocking thing in Israel. I'm going to carry out all my threats against Eli and his family from beginning to end. I have warned him that judgment is coming upon his family forever because his sons are blaspheming God, and he hasn't disciplined them. So I have vowed that the sins of Eli and his sons will not be forgiven by sacrifices or offerings. Samuel stayed in bed until morning. Then he got up, he opened the doors of the tabernacle as usual. He was afraid to tell Eli, and God had told him to tell Eli, but it was going to take a lot of courage to say something that was so hard. And Samuel was just a boy, and he had to tell the priest what God said about his sons. So Eli called out to Samuel. He was wanting to know what God had said. And he said, Samuel, my son. And Samuel said in verse 15 of chapter 3, Here I am, Samuel replied. What did the Lord say to you? Tell me everything. And may God strike you and even kill you if you hide anything from me. So Eli really did want to know what God said, even though he was being disobedient. So Samuel told Eli everything, and he didn't hold anything back. And Eli said, It is the Lord's will. Let him do what he thinks best. Whoa. So Samuel had to be so courageous to hear God and then to do what God said, even though it was very, very hard message. But Eli recognized that Samuel was just saying exactly what God told him to say, and Eli accepted it. He knew that God was right and that he had his sons had been very, 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 very evil. So Samuel was very courageous, whereas Eli had not been courageous. But I think it's just good for us to remember that when God speaks to us, we need to obey and be courageous because it's for our own good. It's not for our bad. If Eli had listened to God, then his sons wouldn't be facing the death that they were going to face. So let's always be courageous and do what God tells us to do because God knows. He loves you and He knows what is best. I hope you have a fabulous, courageous day, and tomorrow we'll finish the story, or we'll continue the story of Samuel, because Samuel's going to be growing up, isn't he? Every day, just like we are. If you're young, you're growing older, and if you're older, you're growing older. We all gain a day every day, and hopefully we gain wisdom and courage. Love you guys. Bye-bye.